Good evening. My name is Helen Anthony. I'm the chair of the committee on finance. I'm calling to order our regular meeting on Wednesday, June 5th at 5:35 p.m.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, if you would please call the roll. Chairwoman Anthony, present. Vice Chairman Taylor.
Here.
Councilor Ingle. Here. Councilwoman Graves. Here. Councilor Sanchez.
Here.
Vice President Noah. Thank you so much, and I would like to recognize our secretary to the solicitor's office. Thank you so much for coming. We've got who else do we have? Aaron, Mr. Gardner, we've got Jane Rose, city council staff, and our wonderful clerks, Lauren Gutierrez and Donna Cruz. And of course, we have the 18 from the finance department. Welcome, and we've our distinguished guests. With that, I'm going to ask for a motion to waive the readings of items 1 through 5 on the agenda. I'm sorry, 2 through. I'm sorry. Do we have the Mr. Meyer here?
I don't believe I see him. And do you know Lavon Meyer is not one of his.
Don't worry. So what I'm going to ask is a motion to waive the reading of agenda item 1, and also for a motion to continue indefinitely.
So you can deny without prejudice.
I'm sorry, deny without prejudice. In the motion.
That's a move.
Second. All right, motion made by Councilor Gray, seconded by Councilor Lindahl. All in favor? And I will oppose. And of course, again, we're running up against the time of Mr. Meyer is available at a later date. They can put his name in again. We'll have everything here in finance. May I have a motion to waive the readings of items 2 through 5? So moved. Second. Motion made by Councilor Ingersoll, seconded by Councilor Graves. All in favor? All opposed. Okay, so here we go. We are going to start with the law department. For city solicitor can come to the table and be sworn in. I'd appreciate it. Raise your right hand. This hearing is going to be privileged with testimony about the case. I do. Please make your names and titles to the record.
Jeffrey Davis, city solicitor.
Delivered the A1 inspector and the doctor.
Lawrence Mancini, chief financial officer.
Sarah Cabrera, finance director.
Okay, and I would like to mark the law department budget. Oh, how are you folks? I'd like to mark this as exhibit 32. Can I have a motion?
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Ingersoll, seconded by Councilor Sanchez. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I would like to recognize Pro Tem Pichardo for joining us this evening.
So noted. Yeah.
Okay, so the city solicitor, I'm sorry, we're doing who's going first?
Madam Chair, as typical, we will follow the same format. This will read it right in the summary, and then any question for the finance team, and then we'll go forward to the ready and solicitors. Thank you.
First up tonight, we have the law department. Revenue in this department is budgeted at $25,000, consistent with the 24 budget. Moving on to expenditures, total salaries for fiscal 25 are proposed at $3,371,858, an increase of $339,978. The department has had some organizational shifts in fiscal year 24, which resulted in a decrease in payroll reimbursement for the deputy city solicitor. That used to be partially funded by the school department. This position is fully funded in the general fund for fiscal 25. Total benefits in fiscal 25 are proposed at $1,505,012, a decrease of $243,229. Moving on to services, total services for fiscal 25 are proposed at $2,597,700, a decrease of $246,400 from the 24 budget. And the decrease is primarily due to a reduction in private contractors expense, and there's a modest increase in the training and postage line items. Total supplies for fiscal 25 are proposed at $541,182, an increase of $32,218. And this change is due to increases in rent at the 444 Westminster Street and copying machine lease payments. There's no capital budget in this department.
Thank you. Solicitor, I think we are going to hear your presentation.
Just on behalf of the lawyers and non-lawyer support staff of the law department, we very much appreciate the privilege that we have to represent the city of Providence as our clients. It's very often very demanding and challenging work, but never boring and very fulfilling work as public servants for the city of Providence. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. I am looking. So you've given us an organizational chart. Can you kind of explain to us how you organize this, just so you can get our bearings?
Sure. So there are, in addition to myself as the solicitor, there are 3 deputy city solicitors. And I guess in terms of, rather than going through every single one, the organization is based on going from the deputies to the senior to the associate, to the assistant, and then the non-attorney support staff. And in the boxes are listed the offices and departments in the city that they typically service, handle. Every single city department has legal issues. And so the legal work for the different departments gets, to the best of our abilities, divvied up among different attorneys so that we can kind of focus on a few substantive areas. We're also, as you know, under charter, required to be present and represent every city board and commission, as well as staff every single city council committee. So the council committees, boards, and commissions that the various assistant city solicitors are assigned to are also listed in the boxes. So pretty much the various substantive assignments are what are listed under each attorney.
Could you just give us a little bit of a breakdown or a little bit of background? So I see that I know the deputy, senior assistants, and then associates. Solicitors. Can you give us how a little idea of how what the experiences in each of the categories and how the salaries compare to salaries outside of the city?
Sure. So it's as far as the years of experience, it's not, we're not like completely rigid, but typically the deputy city solicitors are your most experienced. And our deputy city solicitors all have roughly 20 plus years of experience as attorneys. And the senior assistants range anywhere from 10 to 20 plus years of experience. And the associate city solicitors have really anywhere from 5 to 15 or more years of experience. And then the assistant city solicitor positions are generally for folks with less experience. As far as the salaries, I mean, it's an ongoing battle for us because the legal labor market has become particularly challenging for employers. We never expect to actually match what the salary ranges are in the private sector. Never have, we don't expect we ever will. That's that's not an area in which we even try. We think there are other reasons why it's an excellent department for a lawyer to work at. And it's not gonna be for a salary that compares to what they do in the private sector. We do seem to be falling a little behind the state. The state of Rhode Island, certainly we're behind the salary ranges that municipalities are paying to lawyers in our neighboring states. So we're not in an ideal range in terms of what our salaries are in terms of competitiveness for public sector attorneys. But where the city the salary ranges for city lawyers in Providence have been worse in the past, so we're at least trying to catch up to median for public sector attorneys.
Madam Chair, can I just jump in to expand upon what Jeff is saying? So when I started with the city some 20+ years ago, although maybe the salaries weren't competitive or on that par with outside firms or outside agencies, but the benefits and the pension plan was a great attraction. Not so anymore. So a lot of attorneys, even with the generous benefit package that's provided by the city, is not attractive for someone to just come to work for the city. It's also, as Jeff points out, it's salary. That's a big driver. And you know, a lot of people in this market don't even want to come into the office. They want to work remotely. So that's another challenging problem. I mean, especially when we have committees and, you know, our clients are live and in person. And the other thing that Jeff, just to expand upon, yes, we represent the departments. We also represent, as you know, the retirement board. So a lot of the boards and commissions, Board of Licenses, Board of Canvassers require, will litigate matters. So I'm familiar with obviously the Board of Canvassers, as well as the retirement board, because we will have cases at the Supreme Court or Superior Court or up at the State Board of Elections, because those are two of the places that I deal with. And what Jeff has instilled upon the more senior attorneys is to engage the younger attorneys. And you'll know at the retirement board that I bring an assistant city solicitor with me and a litigation matter. So they will eventually transition into the role to be the head attorney like myself at the retirement board or the Board of Canvassers. So that's something that Jeff has instilled upon us to engage these attorneys so they get the experience and they can move on and transition as people leave.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, no, very important points. I think all in all, notwithstanding the challenges with our salary structure, we've done a fairly good job with retention. I think we try to make it a place that is a positive place for lawyers to work and develop professionally. And it is very much a full-time plus job. So they put a lot of hours in. We have a very, very dedicated team of professionals, and I include the attorneys and the non-attorney staff who are very dedicated and spend a lot of time.
Okay, and I will ask one more question and turn it over. Your vacant positions, can you talk about those and how long they've been vacant?
Sure. So we have one paralegal position that is vacant. That has been vacant for several months, I believe. We have a few attorney positions that are vacant. We have been in the process of interviewing and recruiting. And I think, you know, that actually brings up another point to follow up with what Kenny mentioned as far as the challenges and the fact that the benefits aren't quite as favorable as they were for folks who were hired 15, 20 years ago. Is that a lot of folks coming out of law school right now are saddled with lots of credits. So as we try to aggressively recruit, we don't just post we don't just post our job. Listing, we, locally, we post it nationally. I reach out personally to career services offices from Washington all the way up, the coast. I've been involved with some multicultural law student association mentor, other members of the team are as well. We are getting fewer applicants than we used to. And when I reach out to the career services and DEI officials in the various law schools, I keep hearing the same thing. Their students are coming out with so much debt that the salaries we're listing as available are not enough. They're even for folks that are targeting public sector work, public service, public interest, they're just not enough. So that's I think the cause of lengthier vacancies than we've had in the past. We're not just gonna hire anybody. So we're very thorough and thoughtful in our review process of applicants. So we're trying really hard with our recruitment.
All right, who would like to ask questions today? Yes, Council Graves.
My question is, she asked you specifically about how many positions, and you gave us one for the paralegal, how many did you say for the lawyers?
I believe we currently have 4.
This one.
Yes.
And you're going from,
Yes, please, right ahead.
you're going from Washington, state, and then you're coming back.
Well, Washington.
Washington, DC, that?
We proactively send, I mean, we'll take,
all of them?
we actually have someone we're interviewing from Oregon, but what I mean is we put in the effort to proactively send our job listings to every law school from DC up the coast, in the England. Just as an effort, and I'll follow up with personal calls to your service officers, as I said, PIA officers, just try to get a sense for, especially now, why we're getting fewer folks applying. And it's really been nothing but monetary.
So the salary and benefits.
Yeah, the benefits aren't compensating enough for the salary. I think years ago, the benefits did do so. But not too much.
Any more? Yes, Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, Beth. And Kevin.
I have a couple questions. When Sarah gave us the budget overview for salaries, she mentioned that the deputy city solicitor was funded by PTSD in the past, and now is funded by general revenue. Is that person still working with PTSD at all, or are they fully now in the solicitor's office? Because when we heard from PTSD, it's something like they're entirely using outside.
Yes, so the deputy solicitor that was being funded by that position has left the city and is now working for a law firm. And the school department is utilized for the law firm.
So we still have that position on the books, it's just that.
Well, it was never technically a PTSD.
Okay,
It's just that, practically speaking, it made sense. When I started, it was someone who did a portion of their work.
okay.
And then there was so much need. And especially subsequent to the takeover, it got very messy to have, they really were, too many masters, the city, the state. And so, that individual was doing completely PTSD work, and they were reimbursing it, I believe, 80%.
Okay. So this latest. When we had the police, I asked them this, and they said that it's the question to you guys, I'm asking them. When there are large settlements, like I think there was the $16 million settlement with the police officer who hit something,
Yeah.
Where does that show up in the budget?
Does not.
Okay.
It will at fiscal year end. So there is an accounting exercise known as the legal accrual, which is a required exercise that the finance office and controller's office take every year. And so while we are issuing our annual audit, we work with the solicitor's office to get a list of all of our potential claims and suits. There is a highly confidential value assigned to that potential exposure. And we will transfer out of the general fund sufficient funds into what is called our self-insured legal fund to cover our pending claims and suits. So the case you're talking about in particular was one that we were aware of for a variety of years. We have been consistently kind of tucking money away for if and when that suit had settled, and it was paid out of that legal claims fund. So that's kind of the process. It's in our annual audit too, if you're going to see like where that fund lives.
Okay.
It's a very transparent exercise and part of something all self-insured entities have to do.
Okay. I guess back to the, okay, just, for the org chart, I know Chairwoman Anthony was asking about various positions. Who reports to who? Like, because a lot of the other org charts we've seen kind of a chart form, like, what's the structure? Is
I
it?
mean, it would be a messy mix up because we have, in reality, too few people for all the different things we're doing. And so, and I think then again, following up, and I'll try to answer your question more directly in a second, but we do, and part of our efforts to retain, which I think our retention efforts are much more successful than they've been in the past. Part of it is there's a real mentoring component. So more senior attorneys really take younger ones under their wings. And each attorney has to work in a few different areas. So if one of our assistant or associate city solicitors is working on a labor or employment matter, then Kenny is essentially their direct supervisor.
Yeah.
But that same attorney may also be handling federal court litigation with Steve Nelson, and then they report to Steve.
Okay.
And they may also
Yeah.
be handling APRA stuff and work, and report to someone who is in some senses below them in rank. But Nick Poulos oversees all of our APRA, our public records team. So we're not the most hierarchical organization. But folks will report to different people who have been assigned to oversee different areas that we do.
Okay.
Does that,
Yeah, that makes sense.
I wouldn't be able to put that in any, it would look like
Yeah, it would be
a
like.
Rorschach test.
And then for rent going up, did the rent go up, or are you guys looking at more space at 444? Like, what's?
No, just, there's a lease, it's not just the law department, the rent goes up for all of 444 for every department. And it's not, the rent's not divvied up by department, it's just the lease agreement.
Oh, that.
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's what.
so we break it up by square footage. I don't think
So
that
we
you're.
do, but the owner.
No.
Oh, yeah, but on our
Yeah,
sheet, it's good.
yeah, the city does break it up by square footage and assign it to specific departments. I do not necessarily do that analysis of how much square footage each department, since I don't think you guys expanded your.
We have not.
This year.
Okay.
So
It's
yeah,
just
so
the
this
rent
is just
general.
through rec, yeah.
And then I think my last question for now is, under 53401 private contractors, it looks like even we're spending 82% under what we budgeted for last year. What's going on? I mean, that seems fine. I just.
The private contract.
The MRV, there's.
Oh, yeah, so there is a bill that it still will be under, but it will be 60% under. And with that, we do our best job to try to anticipate. A lot of that was anticipated to be used for expert consulting witness in a particularly large case. And the case hadn't progressed on the same timeline that we were anticipating. So we had to be responsible in terms of working the finance and budget for what we expected the amount to be.
Yeah.
And it just didn't reach that amount in this fiscal year.
Okay, but it might for future fiscal years or?
Yeah, I think, where we have a lower amount budgeted for next fiscal year that we think is gonna be okay. We think we're gonna end up being able to spend less than we anticipated.
Oh, and I guess my final is just like a minor thing, but when was the last time the list of committees was updated on their own sheets? Because some of these don't exist anymore. Like the special committee on public safety, I don't think so exists, or the special committee for the study of the progressive tiered property tax.
Yeah,
But like FE, for example, it always is at our, special committee on the environment resilience, so I just didn't know if there was.
yeah, it typically gets updated on a rolling basis, and they don't always remove the stuff until we're absolutely certain.
Yeah,
Because we've been told in the past that some committees
are done.
dormant, and then it comes back, and it's more like, this is more for internal.
Oh.
Like, it's more important that we know someone's assigned to something,
Yeah,
because even with that, occasionally there's a hiccup, and then I get a call that, where's the attorney?
yeah,
And-
that happened at one of our meetings.
Yeah.
It was fine.
And we don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
So it's better for us to leave committees on until we're absolutely certain. Like, so people can be assigned to things that might not have met in the last 3 years, and maybe they'll never. But, it's no harm to have it on the chart, that someone knows if it ever does meet there. Just find it.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's my question now. Also, Etienne is the best person in the cabinet, so just say that publicly about Etienne. Let's retain Etienne as well as. And Kenny,
Oh, thank
obviously. Yeah, I went without.
Yeah, especially if I'm sitting beside him.
Yeah. We love you, Karen.
I
We
think
love Kenny.
we do too. I think, hopefully for those of you who have interacted with various members of the department.
They're all amazing. I just had to shout out.
Proud of that.
I love Kenny. Any other questions? Yes, go time.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions, just clarity. In terms of the overtime, you don't have overtime?
Only for the union, non-attorney staff positions, but we don't really utilize overtime.
It would have to be like a real odd situation if like discovery was due and it was like urgent and we needed the paralegal or the clerks to work overtime. It really comes up that everybody can accomplish what they need to accomplish in the working hours.
And there's no overtime that's applicable to any non-union staff, and most of our staff is not.
Also, just again, clarification on the private contractors. Is this correct? It's pretty much half of what it was last year.
Yeah.
That is correct, yes.
Right.
Well, I think we'll just, that,
Yeah, that asked and answered.
That's a good.
Yeah.
that was what I think I just responded to.
All right, thank you. And currently, lastly, again, you have 4 positions that I think,
Yes,
and you're not looking to fill them.
oh, we're definitely looking to.
Yeah.
We need to.
And Jeff, also, we were delayed because of the council's mandate to hold off filling positions until the pilot, until the
Pilot agreement was,
ratified. So that kind of delayed everything also.
Follow up to that, may I just ask, your position, so you're hiring right out of school.
I mean, that's not a requirement, it's, for the work we do, it's ideal if we can get someone with a little bit of experience,
Okay.
but we don't, where, we would hire someone right out of school or someone. I think the folks that were slated to interview range from right out of school to several years of experience.
So then that would be the.
Assistant,
Trying to get an
the
idea.
postings are for both assistant and associate,
Assistant and associate,
Yeah.
4 positions.
Yeah.
In that range,
yes,
okay,
and
and you need all 4.
we do, yeah.
I'm gonna ask. I gotta ask. I'm sorry.
I mean, I would say that, a fully staffed law department in the long run, and even in the sort of short run, can save the city money, because, the legal work we do has to be done. We can't, like, there's nothing that we're doing that is optional. For the city. And so if it can't be handled by the law department, it has to be handled by somewhere. And there doesn't exist outside counsel that has an hourly rate that's lower than our highest, the hour we pay for the highest paid city solicitors. So the more we can do in-house, the less we have to spend on.
Thank you. Council Sanchez.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Jeff and finance team. My first question, what is the revenue from that's coming into the law department?
So we do affirmative litigation on behalf of the city. The two areas that we predominantly engage in for affirmative litigation is antitrust cases against pharmaceutical companies. So we are a self-insured entity, meaning that if pharmaceutical companies engage in antitrust behavior that results in higher drug costs, it costs the city a lot of money. Because we have a lot of beneficiaries of our health insurance. And so we have filed what we call a not insignificant number of lawsuits against pharmaceutical companies. So that's the kind of revenue that would show up in that line item. We also do a lot of securities litigation, although that I don't think shows up there, that goes directly to the pension fund. So on behalf of the pension fund, because we are the legal counsel for the pension fund, we file a lot of securities lawsuits to recover money for illegal actions by that we have. So, and I don't know if that includes also the details. Yeah, that's so we work with public safety, but I guess that doesn't show up.
I asked that because last year it was budgeted at 25,000 and this year again 25,000, but the past 3 fiscal years have been a little bit higher.
Yeah.
So I was kind of wondering how that works.
It's really hard to predict because these are class action suits. So it's really hard. They can get settled in like a year or two, or they can drag on for several years. So we try to again be super conservative in the budget and hope that each year the revenues will get high.
Do you know off the top of your head how many we're currently involved in class action?
Off the top of my head, several. I'm happy to get there.
Not super important. And then just to clarify on the vacant positions, so is it 2 and 2 or all 4 of those positions either associate or assistant?
So that's a little bit of a tricky question, Councilman, because of the way we budget and staff for their salaries. You can see they have solicitor positions or attorney positions that range from assistants all the way up through deputies. And we will allow kind of a large bandwidth of what positions they're filling depending upon who the staff is or who the applicant is. And so it's not a one-to-one relationship. It is in terms of count of FTEs, right? So every year we know they can't go over the number of attorneys they have hired. But as long as they're able to stay within their budget, if they have a stellar candidate for a position that needs to come in at a senior level, and they were originally planning on hiring an assistant, we like to give them the flexibility to make that maneuver so that they can act in the best interest of the city and recruit the best and retain the best candidates possible. So when we talk about vacancies in their office, it's not, we don't necessarily say they have one vacant city solicitor, 1 and 1 vacant associate solicitor 2. We kind of look at it as a pool of positions. So the job functions are somewhat closely related. This is certainly talk a little more about that. But the skill set and experience that's required for one sounds like a little more flexible than, for example, like in our finance office, right? The skills and requirements that our pension administrator needs to administer the entire pension system and process pension payroll and all of that is very different than what our fiscal supervisor needs, because she's booking journal entries and doing bank recs and all of that. And so even though they're in the finance department, the skills and background needed to do those jobs are very, very different, and they're not interchangeable typically. That is not the case in the solicitor's office. So we typically will budget a certain number of attorneys and a salary based on who's in those positions at the time the budget is passed. But as turnover occurs and positions are filled, that may change throughout the year.
So I guess my follow-up to that would be like, how do you like budget like the finances of it? Like say like. If we had good luck next weekend, we had 4 like amazing applicants that want to work for the city and they deserve like the senior pay rate. Like how, is there enough money to do that or?
No, so it's not an automatic, so.
Yeah, so we wouldn't do that. So
Yeah.
I think the way Crystal explained it is perfect, and I guess to follow up on that. We would never make offers without checking with finance to make sure that it's gonna work. So to that point, and I think it's to the city's benefit, and we appreciate that flexibility. There have been a couple of times in the last few years where, our target might have been lesser experience, but we had somebody from a different public sector position who was, not loving their position and had been referred to our office, that they stay in public service, and that's a really good place, and they do good work. And so, but they came to us with too much experience to bring them in at the level we were initially trying to hire someone. But it would have been just was a great opportunity for us to bring someone on with their level of experience. So we worked with finance to make sure we did it, and then maybe didn't hire the next position for a while. So we made sure that we didn't go over budget. So we're really careful to work with finance to make sure that we don't run into trouble, but we need to have flexibility. I think we've been very good about it. I don't think we've ever gone over budget.
They have not, and I will say that the solicitor and I chat regularly about his staffing levels, where his salary budget's at, what positions he can fill, what positions we can't fill, and how that will impact the operating budget. Additionally, one of my responsibilities is to sign all entrance forms for all city employees. So not like a budget check. So before an employee even makes their way to payroll for any department in the city, I am reviewing that paperwork, signing that form and confirming budget is available. So we have controls in place to prevent the department from going with budget. That's your concern.
Thank you. No, that wasn't really a concern, just trying to get a better understanding. Am I good?
Yes, please.
Is outside counsel budget part of the private contractors then? Is that?
No, that fee's not, so fees not classified is all of the outside counsel. Private contractors is any sort of specialty, contractors, it includes constables, that is the valuation services the solicitor mentioned previously. I believe translators and interpreters are included in that figure. And stenographic services and arbitrators. So they try to keep all the professional services that are provided outside of outside counsel in the private contractors line item. That way, in fees not classified, we're looking at the true outside counsel costs. It's not being blended with other sorts of professional services.
Fair enough. And then is the pay of the claims and damages line the legal claim fund? Is that what the same thing? Is that what we were talking about earlier?
Yes and no. So what happens throughout the year is when we pay the claims and damages, we charge them to this account code. So you'll see there's a $6 million expense in there right now. At the end of the year, when we do that analysis of how much funding we need to have in reserve, this is the account that either sees a reduction in expense or an increase in expense at the end of the fiscal year. So you'll see in previous years, probably if you're looking at the history, that it is greater than that 800,000. And that is because when the general fund records the current year's expense required to get that account up to where it needs to be, it gets charged to this line item. But the full balance of that account lives in what's called our legal accrual or legal claims fund, which is in our financial statements. So at the end of the fiscal year, that a large portion of that payment, that $6 million is what Councilman Andor was talking about earlier, and that is already approved for it, so it will come out of the operating budget for this fiscal year.
What's the balance of that fund right now?
It had I don't have the audit in front of me right now. I want to say close to 14 million in it prior to this payout, but I can give you the section of the audit that has that fund here. If you're interested in looking at that.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you also.
And just to follow up, I guess this is a question for the solicitor, how do you value the cases, the pending cases for, possible, judgments or something?
I mean, that's really, the work with the attorneys with, really with whatever departments is involved in a particular case. I mean, that's, as it's typical in kind of valuing a civil matter, if the attorney working with their clients. And of course, we're a corporate client, and so it's the relevant staffers of the clients who help the attorney figure out what it's the proper valuation.
Any other questions? No. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And thank you for all the work you do for the city.
Thank you.
Next on our list, we have the administrator of elections board of canvassers.
Administrator of elections, city of Providence.
These families can be encouraged. I have we are about to get his approved by food. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we're gonna have the recommended service. Oh, I'm sorry, we have that. The markers. We have the board of canvassers handout, which is the number 33. We have a motion. So second motion made by Councilor Gray, seconded by Councilor Anderson. All in favor? Aye. All opposed. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next up tonight, we have Board of Canvassers. This is not a revenue generating department. Total salaries in fiscal 25 are proposed at $794,937. This is an increase of $23,435. The department has proposed no organizational changes. Total benefits for fiscal 25 are proposed at $241,579, decrease of $44,459. Moving on to services, total services for fiscal 25 are proposed at $95,500. This is a decrease of $30,800 from the 24 budget. This department has done a comprehensive analysis of spending in fiscal year 2021, which is the last presidential election, and reallocated services and supply items accordingly. Posted expenditures have increased, whereas other supply line items have decreased, resulting in a net savings to the city. Total supplies in fiscal 25 are proposed at $21,000, and this is an increase of $4,000 from the 24 budget. And that's primarily due to additional funding requests for polling station rent and machinery and equipment. And you'll see a reduction in miscellaneous expenses. And there's no capital budget in this department.
Okay. It's been our duty.
I'm here, members of the committee, thank you for having me here tonight. So the board of canvassers, we work, very strategically trying to, right now it's list maintenance, we're working on list maintenance. We have the national change of address rolling in the authority, that 4 times a year. And we're gearing up for the big election, presidential elections this year. We're also going to have school committee on the ballot for the first time in a while. And we are looking at working with the communications team in the city and really doing a plan on voter outreach and getting the turnout. Our numbers are pretty low, pertaining to statewide figures as far as voter turnout. So I'd like to see an increase in that. I'd also like to, department, we're trying to get out to the neighborhood communities now, more, spreading information, because one of the things we combat with, And Board of Cancer is misinformation, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So what we do to try to get out, visiting some senior high rises coming up with the mayor and his team. Try to get the word out. Just because you read it on Facebook doesn't necessarily mean it's true, please come to the source. That's what we're trying to stress. We have early voting now, we have, excuse mail ballot. We have 82 precincts that we have to win for the primary and the election. So one of the big things we're looking at now is poll worker recruitment. So if you know anybody that wants to get poll worker, they want to work a long day, but it's a fun day. Please send them our way. I'm very honored to answer any questions of the community about.
We'd like to take all the questions. Anybody else? What's the difference? Thank you, Joe. Thank you for the presentation, for all the great work you do. What's the difference between a teller and a clerk?
So basically, the teller position is a position that we have. The person that's currently in that position was transferred to another department, and she held her current position, which is a union position. That's why we have a teller.
Oh, okay, so she's good. Okay. All right, other questions, great. In terms of your voter outreach, I mean, so can you specifically talk about who you're sending out, since you have such a small department? Who actually is doing that work and what are doing?
I have 3 board members that are very active. I'm very lucky to have them. I get members that are very active. They go out in the community. Myself, the staff, trying to get them involved also. Then it becomes a full-time expense. So we kind of limit, but we can do it in-house. I have visited Washington Park. I'd like to make arrangements to get out to city council people's meetings. And talk with the residents as much as we can. I'd love to spread it. We had, board of commissions, open house last night. And a lot of people are approaching our table not knowing what's board of canvassers. You hear that, it's not, it's not like the board of elections, which really you should actually change the term. Maybe change it to the local board of elections. People understand a little more about what we do.
And I'd also like to learn a little more about your list maintenance, how that works, to ensure that we have an accurate list of voters.
Okay, so basically, there's several ways we do it. There's the NCOA process, which is the National Change of Address. So 4 times a year, the Senate usually require once every 2 years, but we've got some of the years back changed it to once. Try to do it every 4 years. In an election season, it's kind of difficult because under federal and state law, we can't do any kind of list agents 60 days, 90 days before an election. So what we do is on a state level, the state Secretary of State's office sends the file to a vendor, the statewide file to a vendor. And they run it through the National Change of Address, USPS service. So what we do is we get those records back, and currently we have, I think it's 2,600 that say, hey, we ran over the addresses through the United States Postal Service, this is the new addresses. So what happens is the state sends a card out to the current registration address that's in the current and the CVRS card, it's the registration system. And then it's in box B that goes to the second address, that's the NCOA address. So the voter technically gets 2 cards at the current voter registration address and the new address. And then it's up to the voter to respond to us. Basically, what we see a big problem is when those cards are received at a address where the person no longer resides, the person doesn't return it to sender. So the Secretary of State actually put a disclaimer on the cards now going forward that if you no longer live, if this person no longer lives at us, please return it to us so we can do this maintenance. That's one way. Another way, I think the centralized voter registration system makes our life so much easier. We do cancellations come over, deaths, if there's any deaths, they come over electronically right from the statistics, they remove. We're currently working on listening this. We have to, there's a term called inactive voters, and that doesn't necessarily mean the person doesn't vote.
What that is that's a piece of mail went to the person's address and came back undeliverable, so we make them inactive. Under federal and state law, they have to stay inactive for 2 federal elections. But if, say for instance, it could be, they just forgot to put an apartment number. So what happens is the voter comes to the polling place on election day and, well, they're inactive. Then they can confirm that they still live at that address. Maybe they're just missing an apartment. That's also another way. And the Secretary of State's office actually just did, no vote 5-year mailing. So basically, anybody who has not voted for 5 years, you can't remove them, but you can send them out a piece of mail. And then if it comes back undeliverable, then we can make that person inactive. And then if they stay inactive for 2 federal elections, then we can remove them. So that's a good tool about the lawsuit.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, that's okay. Yes, Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, Administrator of Elections, Mr. Narducci. I have your title right here in front of me, that's why I'm so glad to be awkward or anything. I only have one question, and I really do appreciate all the work that you and your team does. Important part of our democracy. My only question is, I don't think it's gonna pass at the State House this year, but there's a big push in the General Assembly for same-day voter registration. But I do see it happening in the near future. Is your department equipped to handle that, or are you thinking about that? Or
I mean, we're always thinking about that. Prior to working for the city, I left the state, I went into the private industry, doing elections, so I spent a lot of time in New Hampshire. We have same-day registration, and if they do it, they do it right. We could make it work. But I would, the General Assembly, if it does pass, keep in mind, what's at the General Assembly right now is just a question, so they have to change the law. The Constitution. So what they're asking for the voters is to just, right now in the Constitution, there's a stipulation that says you have to be registered for 30 days. So what they're saying is we want to strike that from the Constitution and then give the General Assembly the approval to go the same day, 7 days, 14 days, whatever they choose. But we are definitely, if they do same-day, I kind of support same-day registration. I think it's time we can do it. We would have to put a plan together as far as where those same-day registrations, because currently we do that now for President, Vice President. So, like Connecticut, for instance, they have same-day registration. You have to go to the city of California because what they do is they check the centralized voter registration system, make sure you're not registered in any other city or town, and then they add it, and then you're able to vote.
makes sense. Thank you. I appreciate that. Just one more question. Oh man, I lost it.
Anytime, I mean.
It might come back. It might not.
Downstairs, if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to give me a call.
Yeah, no, it's gone.
It's better.
Yeah.
It's better. It's very.